Jewish people walking through the bank, they don't suffer from the same discrimination. Housing as well. There used to be signs up all over America. No blacks, no Jews, no Irish, no Mexicans. I once got suspended off of Facebook because we were talking about the civil rights movement and who the civil rights movement impacted. And we always see the no blacks allowed, colored interests, white interests, but nobody history has erased all of the no Irish allowed, no Catholics allowed, no Jews allowed. And yes, the Protestants hate the Catholics in this, and it's still beefing in this country. In certain areas like Boston, Protestants and Catholics freaking hate each other's guts. But Protestant cops don't shoot Catholic white citizens. It's about power and vulnerability, not just the hatred. We focus on changing their hearts. But let me tell you something. Non-racist cops harass and brutalize black people. Black cops harass and brutalize black people. So even in the absence of personal individual animosity and racism towards black, the system is structured where anyone who is vulnerable will be harassed, brutalized, and murdered with impunity with this system because it is about power and vulnerability, regardless of people love or hate you or not. That's just like Trump ran around this country talking about Islamic terrorism and the Muslims are going to kick out all the Muslims and stop Muslims from coming to this country. And Islam is a horrible religion. And he got on a plane and flew to Saudi Arabia. And his ass was eating falafel. And he was in the mask bumping his head because he was in a position of vulnerability. When he interacts with Arabs and Muslims who have power, he acts like he's got some damn sense. Yeah, he still hates Islam. He still hates Muslims. He still hates Arabs. He hates them, but he acts like he's got some damn sense. Go look up Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia. You'll see him kissing the ring of the Sultan. You see him dancing the Seder and dancing around doing the traditional Saudi Arabian Arabic dances. Trump was all over. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. Trump didn't want no smoke. Did Trump have a change of heart? Did Trump discover a newfound appreciation or love of Muslims? No. He understood, listen, I'm in their house. They have the power. It's up to them whether or not I can get on this plane and go back. So that's how you deal with racism. You don't deal with racism by changing their heart or appealing to their love, their sense of justice and morality. You deal with them by having them understand the same ability you have to inflict harm on me, I have the same or greater amount to inflict harm on you. Mutually assured destruction. And I know we don't like to talk like this because we have a lot of lofty ideas. So before we can even deal with black vulnerability, we have to understand and accept that black people are vulnerable. Some black people don't want to accept that we're vulnerable. Some black people are like, I got a U.S. citizenship, I got a social security number, I got a good job, I got a degree, I got a BMW and a mortgage. So a lot of black people think that they are full-fledged American citizens. Not to mention that Jews in Germany had all that and more. And when there's a change in the political climate, everything you got could be taken away in a day. Holla at Bill Cosby if you don't think you can never have enough money to escape being black. You can't buy your way out of this caste system. You can have more stuff. But so, we are vulnerable. If you don't accept that you're vulnerable, some black people don't even want to accept that they're black. They Indians, they Hebrews. So there's a lot to this. So a lot of black people who are vulnerable, who are black and vulnerable, won't even accept. Some black people don't accept that they're black. Some black people don't accept that, hey, I'm black, but I'm not vulnerable. I'm good. I got mine, like ASAP Rocky. And you know what? The fact that we don't even know how to deal with them is another component in our vulnerability. So I know before I can even slide my premise past you, I have to establish who's black, what's vulnerability, and y'all make me work really harder than I should. But anyway, I'm going to talk about some specific things that make black people vulnerable. And then I have to say what's attacking us. I have to talk about the capitalist agendas, the white agendas, the alien agendas. There's a lot of various competing and cooperating agendas operating for black people. And when I say black people, I mean the Africans and the African diaspora. And whenever someone sits in a government bunker or sits on a military base or sits in a corporate boardroom and comes up with a plan, and black people are either the target of that plan or black people either obstruct that plan. And so they have to deal with us in a way that counters our best interest. We are vulnerable to that and we don't have the means of counteracting that. And I don't care if that's stealing resources from the African continent or gentrifying a traditional black community. It doesn't matter. We don't seem to be able to harness the ability. We're very good at highlighting the atrocities. We're very good at pointing out the injustices. We're really good at coming up with hashtags and memes. But we suck at countering and subverting these agendas. Why is that? Why we suffer? Why are we vulnerable? And before I can even talk about the specifics, what do you want from me? I'm doing the best I can to. But the number one source of black vulnerability, I'll start from the top, is menticide. Menticide, right now, is the greatest threat to black people. And the reason why menticide is the greatest threat of black people, to black people, is because menticide opens us up to all other threats. Now, if you listen to the Bro Diallo show, I know you're frustrated because you're probably thinking, damn, Bro Diallo said the number one threat to humanity is climate change and global warming. Melting of the polar ice caps, acidification and rising sea levels in the ocean, mass extinction and the loss of biodiversity. If you listen to the Bro Diallo show, I tell you that's our number one issue. Bigger than white supremacy, bigger than racism, bigger than everything else. That's the number one thing. And it's true. But what's an asterisk is, because that's our number one problem, anything that gets in our way and that obstructs us from addressing that number one problem is the number one problem. So the number one problem is menticide. The 1.1 problem. So it's 1 and 1. There's two ones in here. You know, we got fractions. We're a little sophisticated. We can deal with, we don't have to just deal with whole numbers. So yes, that is, depending on the discussion. But the number one threat to black people specifically is menticide, because menticide not only stops us from being able to fully grasp the scale of global warming and climate change, it also prevents us from constructing appropriate actions and agendas. And even when we have appropriate actions and agendas laid out before us, it prevents us from coordinating and cooperating and moving forward on those solutions. That's menticide. So menticide not only stops us from being able to address the large-scale problems, menticide prevents us from being able to deal with the local, pedestrian, personal problems that we have. Menticide is the systematic destruction of a group's mind, with the ultimate agenda being the extermination or extirpation of that group. You destroy people's minds, their capacity to think and function on an intellectual level, so that they will be vulnerable to you physically, politically, economically, socially. That's what menticide is. Some of the characteristics of menticide, as Dr. Bobby E. Wright identifies, is that people become anti-analytical, ahistorical, and anti-intellectual. Our capacity to think and comprehend and grasp phenomena are obstructed. And the fact that if you cannot diagnose, if we don't have the intellectual capacity to understand our problems, then we will never be able to intellectually construct viable solutions to those problems. And even if a few of us can construct those solutions, we can't not convince the masses of our people to join with us. And we don't even need the masses. We cannot convince enough of our people to hold to the agenda. And even if we do all of that, because of menticide, even if we get the 5 to 10% of the black community we need to advance agendas for the interest of our people, 90% of the menticidal masses will attack us and subvert us. Our oppressors will be able to employ our own people against us. Right now, they are arming Africans to recolonize Africa under AFRICOM. They used Obama to implement U.S. imperialism and to subvert and to obliterate black financial gains that we've made over the last half century. They used Colin Powell, a black man, Clarence Thomas, a black man, Ben Carson, highly educated black man, to attack us. So we have all these obstacles that are a direct byproduct of the systematic destruction of our mind. This destruction is carried out by confusing ongoing trauma with misinformation and mass indoctrination through the media and educational system. And a traumatized mind, a traumatized individual, reverts to what they call the limbic brain or the reptile brain. You have certain parts of your brain that deal with instinct. And you have what they call the autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. You have basically your consciousness and your instinct. You have the ability to think and rationalize, but then you have just the ability to respond to stimulus. And those two parts of the mind are equally important. You can't be too cognitive or too intellectual that you can't respond on it. You can't have to think. You know, if somebody kicked in this door and was like, I'm going to kick your ass, bro, Diallo, for all the stuff you saying on the air, which has happened. They didn't kick in the door, but I get those threats, but I digress. I can't sit here and contemplate, who is this person? What is their motivation? What do they intend to do? I'm going to have to act, fight or flight. The adrenaline's going to rush, and I'm going to jump over this table and bust him in the head with a microphone stand. Or do whatever else I got to do to protect myself, and I'm not going to intellectualize about it. That's what happens. But if I go home and my son is having an issue and I have to talk, I can't just act, oh, what are you doing? I have to think. So there are times where your cognitive mind has to act. There's other times where your reptilian limbic brain needs to snap into action. Time for reflection. And then sometimes you just need muscle memory and throw them hands. And that's a balance. And what menticide seeks to do is to put us in a perpetual state of crisis. And when we're in a perpetual state of crisis, we become vulnerable to suggestion because our cognitive mind is not very active. When your body is awash with stress hormones, and it is not properly processing those stress hormones, your cognitive mind is greatly weakened. That's why a lot of times you see when you go to church, people that otherwise got enough sense to stay out of church, they come stumbling into church when they've gone through a great amount of stress. And they walk up and give their life to Jesus and say, oh, my mama died. Oh, I was diagnosed with cancer. Oh, my man is beating on me. Oh, and the church preys on these vulnerabilities because people who otherwise have enough sense not to believe that there is a God and there's a Jesus will fall to those delusions because their cognitive brain is not fully activated. It's not fully engaged. And trauma does that. Trauma causes people to revert, not to just babies, but I mean, if you got kids, you know, they don't have very much sense. I got a 10-year-old. They don't have much sense. And he's really smart. You'll have little children that can count, that can do math. Now, my son, he can do math better than me. And physics. He gets on those books and say, Dad, you know, I look over his shoulder sometimes when he's working like, I don't want no parts of what you're doing, man. That stuff is too much. But he doesn't have wisdom. So even though he has all this information, all this data, he doesn't have the wisdom and the experience. So he still needs my guidance, even though there are some things that he knows that I don't know. So that's what they do. They keep us in a perpetual state of crisis to basically make us infantile. And this is not to diss baby, because there ain't nothing wrong with a baby being a baby. There's everything wrong with a grown woman or a grown man being a baby or being infantile. And they do this while you're still in the womb. Dr. Tom Hartman talks about fetal development and the mom's mental and physical state of mind during fetal development. And if the mom body is awash with, now there's nothing wrong. Stress is necessary for life. Now, but I talked about that. I'm just going to go with this and assume that y'all listen to the Bro Diallo show religiously every day and y'all have archived and y'all download the shows and go back and listen to them. Because what I've said may seem to contradict what I've said, but you can go back and listen to what I said about the stress show. This is all consistent. So I won't digress here. But the mother's material condition set the baby up. Mothers who are in a high stress environment, when they are pregnant, give birth to children that are prepared to live in a high stress environment. It's natural evolution. So those children born to mothers under high stress environment have lower cognitive function and higher reactionary limbic function. They tend to anger more quickly. They have higher rates of aggression because the body, our evolutionary biology, is signaling to the mother, signaling to the fetus, you are born into a world of distress and danger. And then they take that child who is born, who is prenatally subjected to rewiring of its brain to be active, to be engaged, and then they put them in an academic environment. Why won't you sit at this desk for 5 hours and look at these little symbols on the page and recite to me what I say to you? Something's wrong with you. When those children who are born into this high stress environment, when they're allowed to be given physical outlets, and they're given the proper mechanisms that speak to their nurturing and their evolutionary development, they excel beyond the little eggheads who can't sit in that desk. When a mother is in a secure environment, the child has a lower heart rate. They come out calmer. They have lower levels of adrenaline, testosterone, and stress hormones because their body is signaling to them, you were born into a calm, settled environment. And you can't come out into this calm, settled environment wilding because then you won't be able to engage and become a part of the community. And we are a communal species. We are a socially dependent communal species. So they start menticide before we are born by stressing out our mothers. Even Serena Williams, with all that money she got, she's laying on the birthing table dying. She even had a white husband to advocate for her. And they're like, nigga, shut up. Nobody knows their body better than Serena Williams. She is the most highly trained, most effective athlete in the history of athleticism. And she said something's not right here. She almost died. And that stress, being in there with all them wealthy white doctors, that still look at her like, yeah, she's rich, but she's a nigga. That translates to her offspring. That's going to impact her offspring for the rest of, what does she have, a boy or girl, his or her life. It seems like Jay-Z understands this a little better. Jay-Z and his wife went and bought and built a whole hospital ward and brought in their own experts. They had to go to super maximum extremes. If you ain't got Jay-Z money to go and buy up the whole top floor of a hospital and buy in and bring in your own specialist and pay for brand new medical equipment and go through all those extremes. Poor white women get better health care than our best celebrities. Prenatal care, postnatal care, and birthing care. So anyway, so a high stress, under-resourced mind then is bombarded by propaganda. It's hard not to kill niggas. It's like a full-time job not to kill niggas. Murder, 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 murder. Dead end street. Gangsta, gangsta, that's what they're yelling. It's all about a salary. It's not about reality. So you hit this media, this antisocial murder music into a non-cognitive brain. Do you know that white kids listen to gangster rap more than black kids do? But they don't have the same antisocial outcome or impact as black kids because of the menticide. So black propaganda is more harmful to black people than black propaganda, anti-black propaganda is to white people. White people have their own issues, and and I'm not trying to big up white people and tear down black people. I'm saying the method that the elites use to control and the agendas that they have for them and us are different. And as Bobby E. Rice said, you can't use white definition to explain black phenomena. So you can't talk about humanity because humanity has such divergences and differences and separations that sometimes you got to talk about one group and leave out the other. So black people, we suffer from menticide. That's our number one problem that makes us the most vulnerable, that we have to address. We have to make our people more cognitive, more rational. We have to make sure everything we do and understand, everything we define and engage is brought into a proper historical context. We have to promote and reinvigorate African intellectualism and historicism. And we have to analyze everything. I don't care if you're going to the grocery store, read the labels on the food you buy and understand how they impact your anatomy and human physiology. When you're driving down the street and you're looking at these billboards, when they make a black mermaid and a black 007, think about it. And I know your people around you are going to not like you very much. I know. You negative. Why are you so negative? You hate everything. If people aren't saying that to you on a semi-regular basis, you're not doing something right. You need to have a radical, in-depth critique. Yes, everything is against you in this society. Yes, they're against you. Yes, it's the white man's fault. And all the things that they tell you that you shouldn't feel, that's exactly what you should feel. Because we are at war. Dr. Claude Anderson said there's only 3 explanations for the state of black people in the world. Number 1 explanation could be that black people are cursed. Some divine supernatural force has cursed us. Number 2 explanation is that black people are biologically, genetically inferior to other races of people. Or the number 3 explanation must be that there are people systematically creating conditions to make sure black people are at the bottom of the socioeconomic strata for their own benefit and profit. Now, if you believe that black people are divinely cursed, which there are a lot of black people that do, the whole black Hebrew Israelite faith is predicated on the fact that black people were cursed by God. And then there are people that believe, not many black people, but there are a lot of people like, you go read, I have a copy of the bell curve. We might have to break down the bell curve or dissect the bell curve. But it's not that popular anymore. In the 90s, it was all over the place. That we are inferior, and therefore we should be grateful to serve at the feet of our race superiors. But if you know history, if you're not mentalcidal, you know history, if you are intellectual, if you have engaged in proper analysis, you'll know that our status is the direct byproduct of deliberate subversion of black people's interests. But we're taught as a people, you're not supposed to be negative. You think somebody's against you, you're paranoid. We need to stop focusing on the white man and focus on us. And we don't like to take personal responsibility and say all this nonsensical stuff. Oh, my time is up. Lord have his mercy. I'm going to have to come back to this. Why we suffer, understanding black vulnerability. Number one thing is menticide. But that's not it. But no, everything I say about black vulnerability and why we suffer, everything I say from this moment forward, you will have to understand that it is a byproduct of menticide. If it is not menticide unto itself, what I say is a byproduct of menticide. So we're going to come back with a part 2 and maybe even a part 3. But I will be gone. I will not be in town, just so you know, as I wrap up. I will not be in town. I will not be on the air Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday. So it might be Friday after next that I'm back because I'm headed to pick up my son, who tomorrow will be returning to the United States. He went on his first international trip this summer, trying to raise up a Pan-African revolutionary warrior, let him get out into the world and understand the world a little better than I did at his age. So anyway, he's coming back to the United States, and we're going to pick him up in New York City and celebrate his birthday in New York. He was born in Brooklyn, New York City, where they pay me. He was born in New York, so he's going to be able to spend his 17th birthday in the city of his birth. We got love for New York and love for Brooklyn, man, but gentrification, damn, it's hard to go there. It's like looking at a corpse of a city. But anyway, if I'm not on the air, I'm going to do my darndest to make sure we do at least a Q&A, and maybe I can broadcast from the hotel room or something. So we're going to stay engaged. We're going to keep with this Pan-African revolutionary analysis. Please, what do I do? Please support, please engage, please participate. You can become a Patreon supporter. And when I get back, a lot of work. The African World Coalition work will begin and accelerate. The African World Order clothing line will come back online. I will be on top of getting out my Patreon gifts. Believe you me, after this last extended trip, I will be back and the work will continue. And hopefully the quality of the work and the intensity of the work will improve if we get the necessary support. Shout out to Johnny, for keeping me on my square. And I will see y'all soon. But again, I'm also across all the social media apparatus too. You can find me across social media. But I'm not broadcasting on Facebook anymore. I mean, they keep suspending my account, so what's the point? I'll get people used to listening to the show on Q4. I'll get people to watch me on YouTube. But that's it. I can't hang with Facebook no more. They just keep suspending me for the most absurd reasons. So anyway, Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680, iTunes apps, iTunes Radio, and Q4.org. What did I do? Oh.